Okay, let's dive in. Keeping up with cybersecurity news.
Yeah.
It feels like a full-time job, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's just this constant stream of breaches, new threats, weird tech terms. It can be a lot.
Right. That's why we do this. Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Exactly. We're basically trying to be your filter. We take this huge pile of info, like this time it's a look back at global cyber incidents from January to April 2025, and we pull out the stuff that actually matters, the stuff you really need to know.
Yeah, our mission today is pretty straightforward. Cut the noise, find the signal. What were the biggest trends? What are the most, maybe surprising events in the first chunk of this year?
And what does it all mean for staying safe online, without getting totally overwhelmed?
We've pulled from quite a few places for this research reports, news articles on specific attacks, trying to get that big picture view.
And honestly, some of what we found is, well, it's pretty eye-opening. And a bit concerning, frankly.
Like what? Give us a sneak peek.
Well, the sheer number of attacks has just exploded. We'll talk about which sectors are getting hammered the most.
And how the attacks themselves are changing, like with AI involved now.
Oh, yeah, definitely AI. Plus, nation states getting involved, new regulations trying to keep up.
And some specific stories, right? I heard something about a massive crypto heist.
Oh, the Bybit one. Over $1 billion. Yeah, we'll get into that. And how attacks are hitting things like healthcare, services we use every day.
Okay, lots to cover. Let's start with that scale you mentioned. Just how bad has the increase been?
It's pretty dramatic, actually. Globally, organizations were hit with an average of 1,925 cyber attacks per week in the first quarter.
Wow, per week.
Per week. That's up 47% from the same time last year, almost 50%.
47%. That's huge. It paints a picture of just relentless pressure.
It really is.
And ransomware, I assume that's still a big driver.
Oh, definitely. Ransomware is kind of off the charts. We looked at multiple reports, and they're all saying Q1 2025 was basically record-breaking.
In what way? More victims? More attacks?
Both. So one source, GRIT, they track victims on leak sites, right? They found over 2,000 new victims listed. That's up 102% from Q1 last year.
Double the number of victims.
Pretty much double, yeah. And Checkpoint Research, they reported a 126% global jump in actual ransomware incidents. So yeah, it's a massive surge.
So it's not just background noise. Ransomware is really accelerating things. And you mentioned the pace, too.
Yeah, the speed is just crazy. GRIT worked it out to nearly 23 new ransomware victims being posted every single day in Q1.
23 a day.
Almost one an hour. And there are these projections floating around, kind of scary ones, saying we could see a ransomware attack every 2 seconds within 10 years if this keeps up.
Every 2 seconds. That's hard to even imagine. Does this have anything to do with maybe fewer companies paying the ransoms? Is that changing the economics?
That's a really good question. And yeah, there's some thinking along those lines. If victims are getting better at not paying, then maybe the attackers figure, okay, if we get paid less often per attack, we just need to launch more attacks. Higher volume to make up for lower returns, basically.
So they just cast a wider net.
Exactly. Which is bad news all around, because even if fewer ransoms get paid, all those attempts still cause chaos, cost money, disrupt everything.
Grim. And you also mentioned this gap between the attacks we hear about, the disclosed ones, and the number of victims actually showing up on leak sites.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Like, Black Fog tallied about 278 publicly disclosed ransomware incidents in Q1.
Okay.
But GRIT, digging through those dark web leak sites, they found over 2,000 victims.
2,000. Compared to less than 300 reported.
Yep, that's a difference of, 1,800 victims just in 3 months that we likely wouldn't know about otherwise. It really tells you the official stats are just the tip of the iceberg. The real scale is probably much, much bigger.
So the problem is even worse than the headlines suggest. Okay, let's talk location. Where are these attacks happening? Is it spread out evenly?
Not really. It's definitely global, but some areas are getting hit harder than others. The U.S. is still, a huge target, especially for ransomware.
Right.
GRIT found a record 59% of all the ransomware victims they tracked in Q1 were in the U.S. Other reports put North America over 60% for reported incidents. Lots of valuable data, critical infrastructure here, right?
Makes sense.
Sure.
But I think you said somewhere else is seeing a really sharp increase.
Yeah. This was interesting. Latin America saw a 108% jump year over year in average weekly attacks per organization.
Wow, over double.
Yeah, a massive leap. It really suggests that region's becoming a major new focus for attackers. Maybe digitalization is happening faster than the security can keep up, that kind of thing.
A new hotspot, potentially?
Potentially. I mean, Europe, North America, Africa, APAC, they all saw increases too, but nothing like that 108% figure in Latin America. That really stood out.
Okay, so shifting focus.
Yeah.
What about nation states? Where are we seeing activity from governments or government-backed?
Well, state-sponsored stuff often follows geopolitical lines, right? A big one was this Salt Typhoon campaign, attributed to China-linked actors.
Typhoon. Okay, what did they do?
They went after Cisco networking gear big time.
Uh-huh.
Hit U.S. telecoms, mainly reportedly breached at least 9 major ones.
9 telecom.
Yeah, and apparently stole over 3,000 files from the U.S. Treasury.
Treasury files. Wow.
And it wasn't just the U.S. They hit targets in Taiwan, Italy, South Africa, Thailand, too. Classic sort of espionage playbook, it seems.
Going after critical infrastructure, government secrets. What about other usual suspects? Russia, North Korea.
Yep. Reports mention Russian-linked attacks hitting Ukraine, Italy, and some diplomatic targets in Kazakhstan. There's this group, Storm 237, also thought to be Russian-linked, doing sophisticated phishing against Microsoft 365 accounts, critical sectors in Europe, the U.S., and then, North Korea, Lazarus Group.
Lazarus, always busy.
Tell me about it. They were allegedly behind that insane Bybit crypto theft, $1.46 billion.
Billion, with a B. Billion with a B. Biggest crypto heist ever recorded, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not just doing finance stuff. Also seen using LinkedIn for spying, trying to connect with people who have access to interesting info.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Allegedly North Korea. That's just staggering. Okay, let's zoom in on some of these big incidents. Change Healthcare. That one felt like it caused absolute chaos.
Oh, it was catastrophic. A perfect storm, really. Change Healthcare is... Well, it's plugged into almost everything in the U.S. healthcare system.
Right. They handle payments, prescriptions.
Billions of transactions.
Right.
Data for potentially, 190 million people. The scale is just massive. It shows the risk when so much relies on one single provider.
Yeah, 190 million people potentially affected. And it wasn't just data, right? It actually stopped people getting care.
Exactly. It broke core functions, claims processing payments, getting prescriptions filled, checking insurance. Hospitals, doctors' offices, they were bleeding money. 94% reported financial impacts.
94%. And worse, 74% said patient care was directly hit.
Yeah.
Delays in getting treatments approved, trouble getting meds. And on top of all that, a massive data breach, health info, medical records. There are reports they paid a $22 million ransom, too.
$22 million.
Yeah. It just laid bare how vulnerable the whole system can be when it's so concentrated.
Really makes you think about how fragile these systems we depend on are.
Okay, back to that Bybit theft for a second. $1.46 billion. How does that even happen?
The exact how isn't fully public, but essentially a huge amount of Ethereum was taken from one of their secure cold wallets.
Okay.
The really significant part is the FBI coming out and saying, yeah, that was Lazarus Group, North Korea.
Right. It
really signals that state actors are not just capable but willing to pull off massive crypto heists, probably to fund the regime, get around sanctions, that sort of thing.
State-sponsored crypto crime at that level. That's
chillin'. What about the other big ones? Lee Enterprises, the newspaper group. What's the significance there?
Right. Lee Enterprises, they own over 75 papers, got hit by Quillen ransomware. It shows that it's not just about finance or critical infrastructure. Quillen claimed they stole 350 gigs of data, and the attack messed up printing websites. It makes you worry about attacks disrupting the news, right? The flow of information.
Yeah, definitely concerning for just public knowledge. And DISA Global Solutions, that sounded like a supply chain nightmare.
Textbook supply chain risk. DISA does employee screening for tons of companies, maybe a third of the Fortune 500.
Okay.
Breached their exposed info on over 3.3 million people. It shows how one weak link in that chain of third-party provider can cascade outwards and hit so many others. Sensitive data, employee data, across hundreds of companies potentially.
Right. Your security is only as strong as your vendor's security, basically.
Pretty much sums it up.
And Salt Typhoon, again, briefly, over 1,000 Cisco devices compromised. That scale seems deliberate, sophisticated.
Absolutely. Hitting telecoms like that, potentially getting ongoing access to government communications. It points to highly organized, well-resourced state actors, definitely not random.
Okay, so we know the scale. We've seen some examples. Which sectors are really in the firing line Most often. Healthcare keeps coming up.
Yeah, healthcare is consistently right up there. Just in the U.S., in Q1 alone, 160 reported healthcare breaches, 5.6 million patient records compromised.
5.6 million in 3 months.
Yeah. That health information PHI is valuable on the black market. Plus, hospitals have to operate, so they're prime targets for data theft and ransomware, like we saw with Change. And tons of smaller incidents, too. Hospitals, health ministries.
It's awful thinking these attacks directly hit patient care. What about schools, education research?
Interestingly, education research actually had the highest average number of weekly attacks per organization globally.
Really? Higher than finance or government?
Yeah. Think about it. Tons of student and staff data. Valuable research, intellectual property. They also saw a 16% rise in ransomware, targeting them specifically. That PowerSchool breach affected thousands of schools. Big disruption, lots of data exposed.
So it's not just the obvious money targets. Anywhere with lots of personal data is at risk. Governments, military still prime targets too, I assume?
Oh, for sure. Government and military see constant attacks. Motivations are all over the place. Spying, disruption, political influence. We saw attacks on government websites, agencies, from Kazakhstan to Italy, U.S. local governments, even KLIA airport in Malaysia. Very diverse.
Right. Hitting all levels. What about manufacturing? See more action there.
Definitely. Manufacturing has become a major ransomware target. You've got IT systems increasingly connected to the OT systems, the ones running the actual factory floor.
The IT-OT convergence.
Exactly. That creates new weak points. And if attackers can shut down production, that gives them huge leverage for a ransom demand. Companies can't afford to be offline.
Makes sense. Big pressure to pay. What about services? That's kind of broad.
It is broad, but yeah, business services, consumer services, tech providers, all getting hit frequently. DISA Global Solutions fits right in there. An attack on one service provider can ripple out and affect so many downstream clients and individuals.
And finance and insurance. Still big targets, even with likely strong defenses.
Absolutely. Maybe not always topping the ransomware charts, but still critical targets. Think data breaches for financial info, sophisticated phishing. The massive crypto thefts fit here. Breaches at investment firms, insurers. Plus, they face heavy regulation, like the EU's DORA Act, which pushes them to keep defenses tight.
It really feels like no sector is safe. Anywhere else standing out?
Yeah, one trend worth noting is nonprofits and education, again, seem to be getting hit more often. Some reports talk about an erosion of respect, like attackers are going after targets they might have avoided before. These places often have lots of data, but maybe fewer resources for top-tier security. Makes them potentially easier targets.
So nobody's off limits. Okay, we know who's getting hit. How are they doing it? Are the tactics changing much?
Oh, constantly evolving. Ransomware tactics are getting slicker. Ransomware as a service is still dominant, makes it easy for less skilled actors to launch attacks.
Right, the rarest model.
And double extortion is pretty much standard. Now they encrypt your data and steal it, threaten to leak it if you don't pay. We're also seeing lots of fragmentation, new ransomware groups popping up all the time.
So even if one group gets taken down, others fill the gap?
Yeah.
What about phishing? Still a major way in.
Still huge. Phishing, social engineering, probably still the main way attackers get that first foothold, and it's getting way more sophisticated.
How so?
Well, AI and deepfakes are making phishing lures much more convincing, more personalized. We've seen a big jump in voice phishing over the phone, malicious QR codes, even using LinkedIn like Lazarus Group did for targeted attacks or spying.
Deepfakes in phishing.
Wow.
That's next level. Are they still just hammering vulnerabilities too?
Oh, yeah. Scanning for known weaknesses in software, hardware that's bread and butter. We saw it with Cisco, Salt Typhoon, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Trimble, Ivanti, tons of vendors. The number of actively exploited vulnerabilities is way up. Patching is just critical, absolutely critical.
The basics still matter.
Yeah.
Hugely. What about the malware itself? Is it always custom viruses?
Not always. There's this growing trend of malware-free attacks or living off the land.
Living off the land.
Yeah, instead of bringing in their own malicious code, they use legitimate tools already on the system, like PowerShell, WMI, admin tools.
So they blend in.
Exactly. Makes it way harder for traditional antivirus to spot them. Looks like normal activity. CrowdStrike said something like 79% of their detections were malware-free.
Clever. Evasive. And AI, we keep mentioning it, sounds like a real game changer for both sides.
Definitely a double-edged sword. Attackers use it for better phishing, maybe finding vulnerabilities faster, creating malware that changes itself. Polymorphic stuff. Lots of IT pros are worried about AI-enhanced malware. We even saw reports of North Korean actors using Gen AI for social engineering.
Wow.
But defenders are using AI too, right? For better threat detection, automating responses. It's becoming an AI arms race, really.
An AI arms race in cyber. And deepfakes, are we actually seeing them used in attacks now, or is it still mostly hype?
No, it's happening. The tech is getting better, easier to access. We're seeing them used in more advanced scams, disinformation campaigns. There's even a market for deepfake tools on the dark web now.
That's unsettling. The potential for misuse there is huge. Quick tangent, quantum computing. Is that something we need to worry about now for cybersecurity?
Quantum is more on the horizon, a strategic threat. We don't have quantum computers yet that can break today's encryption. But it's coming. So organizations, especially those with super sensitive long-term data, need to be watching post-quantum cryptography developments. Planning that transition down the line, it's not an immediate panic, but it's on the radar.
Got it. Long-term watch item. Okay, so we know the how. Let's talk who. We've mentioned ransomware gangs, state actors. Can you break down the main players?
Sure. It's a diverse crowd. You've got the ransomware groups, mostly driven by money. The RASC ecosystem means there are tons of them, maybe 70 plus active groups, operating like businesses, really.
Financially motivated criminals?
Yep. Then state-sponsored actors, China, Russia, North Korea, others. Their motives are espionage, disruption, political influence. Sometimes the lines blur between them and cyber criminals, too.
Right.
Then you have other financially motivated criminals who aren't doing ransomware, maybe big crypto thieves like the Bybit attackers, people selling stolen data, payment fraudsters, and finally hacktivists attacking for political or social reasons, like DDoS attacks against government sites.
So a whole ecosystem of different threats. We've talked a lot about external attackers, but what about insider threats? Still a factor.
Oh, always. Malicious insiders or just employees making mistakes. That's a constant risk. And it ties right back into that supply chain issue we keep mentioning.
Right, third-party risk. You said it's a leading concern now.
Absolutely. Why bash down the front door of a well-defended company when you can sneak in through a less secure supplier they trust?
Makes sense.
We saw it with TalkTalk, maybe getting hit via a third party, Community Health Center via a vendor vulnerability, DISA affecting millions through a service provider, PowerSchool via a support platform. The supply chains are just so complex. Often you don't even have full visibility into who your suppliers rely on. It creates tons of potential entry points.
A huge challenge.
Yeah.
And it sounds like regulators are finally clamping down on this.
Yeah, definitely more focus there. Proposed HIPAA updates in the U.S., the big EU directives, DORA and NIS2, they all have bits about managing third-party risk. It forces companies to take responsibility for their supply chain security.
Which must be tough for global companies, dealing with different rules everywhere.
Exactly. Navigating that international patchwork of regulations is a major headache.
Okay, so with all these threats, how are organizations and governments actually fighting back? What are the key strategies?
On the organizational side, it's about building resilience, not just prevention, but being able to withstand and recover from attacks.
So technical stuff.
Yeah. Technical controls are key. Strong encryption, multi-factor authentication everywhere, aggressive patching, network segmentation, moving towards zero trust models.
Yeah.
Plus, using advanced tools like EDR, XDR, SIM for detection and response, regular testing vulnerability scans, pen tests. Training employees is huge, making them aware of phishing and social engineering. And like we said, really focusing on managing that third-party risk, exploring AI for defense too.
A layered approach. What about law enforcement? Are they making headway?
They're definitely trying, and international cooperation is key. Operation Endgame was a big example. Lots of countries working together, FBI, Europol.
What did Endgame do?
They went after the infrastructure behind major malware families, like botnets, taking down servers, command and control networks. It's a strategic shift. Instead of just chasing individual hackers, disrupt the tools and networks they rely on.
Hit them where it hurts, operationally.
Exactly.
Right.
Agencies like Europol's EC3, Interpol, the FBI, they're all trying to coordinate these cross-border efforts. But it's tough.
Why tough?
Well, different laws in different countries, proving who did it is hard, attribution, attackers using anonymizing tech, lots of hurdles for international cooperation and prosecution.
An ongoing battle then. And regulations, you mentioned a few. It sounds like a complex maze for businesses now.
It really is. You've got NIS2 and DORA in the EU, really tightening screws on cybersecurity and operational resilience, especially supply chains. The EU AI Act touches on it too.
And in the U.S.
Proposed high-pay updates for healthcare, more state privacy laws kicking in, CIRCIA mandating incident reporting for critical infrastructure, new rules for federal contractors too, plus global stuff like India's DPDPA, Canada's PIPEDA.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. What's the net effect of all this regulation?
The goal is obviously better security, better data protection, but the reality for companies, especially global ones, is a huge compliance burden.
Right.
The lack of global harmony means dealing with fragmented, sometimes conflicting rules. And there's this risk, right, that companies focus so much on ticking the compliance boxes that they lose sight of implementing security that actually works to reduce risk. It's a real tension.
Compliance versus actual security.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, wrapping things up then. Looking ahead, based on everything from early 2025, what are the big trends we should expect to continue?
Well, I think the sheer volume of attacks isn't going down anytime soon. Ransomware will keep evolving. AI is going to be central for attackers and defenders.
AI arms race.
Exactly. Sophisticated social engineering isn't going away. Attackers will keep finding and exploiting vulnerabilities. Supply chains will remain a huge battleground.
And more regulation.
Definitely more regulatory pressure. Plus, that ongoing cybersecurity skills gap, finding enough qualified people, is still a major challenge. And ultimately, a bigger focus on operational resilience. How fast can you get back up after you do get hit?
So a complex, fast-moving picture.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully, by digging into these trends, these incidents from early 2025, our listeners feel a bit more grounded, a bit better equipped to understand it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing the threats, the tactics, the vulnerable spots, that's half the battle in figuring out how to protect yourself, right?
It really is. So here's a final thought, maybe. Considering how fast AI is evolving on both sides, offense and defense, what do you think the next big turning point might be in this whole cybersecurity arms race? Something to chew on.
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's moving so fast. Definitely something we'll keep watching in future deep dives. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.